The following podcast is brought to you on behalf of the Saracens Supporters Association and is not an official product of Saracens Limited. Content provided voluntarily by our guests and contributors are of their own opinion, which may change over time and should not be taken as fact, particularly as the podcast hosts are regularly talking drivel anyway. If you've got some drivel of your own you'd like to share, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at fezcast_SSA. You can search Facebook for the Fezcast, or you can email fezcast.ssa@outlook.com.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fezcast. And joining me tonight is Matt and Barry. Plenty to discuss, although nothing too great. Saracens men, other than the Premiership Cup, which we'll talk about. Obviously, the seniors have got a bit of a break now. Saracens women return to the Allianz 15s, but we've also got a brilliant interview with Charlie-Reynolds West, who's one of the up-and-coming players coming through, and then we'll discuss England. But, gentlemen, first of all, how are we?
Yeah, good, thanks. I caught up with the women's game yesterday. It was good to have that on the iPlayer. It wasn't quite technically perfect. It disappeared at one point very early on, came back again, and then we lost audio and all sorts of various strange bits. But it was good to have it and good to be able to join in with it, as it were.
Yeah, good to have some free-to-air, which I managed to catch a little bit of at work as well. So I did watch the full game out the corner of my eye, and caught a bit of Saturday too. So yeah, I managed to get a bit of rugby in.
Well, I did well because it was my wedding anniversary on Saturday. So 9th wedding anniversary, me and Shazza, and I managed to. Well, we went out for lunch and walked the dogs and everything like that. But then I managed to watch the rugby on Saturday afternoon, which was very good of my darling wife to allow me to do that. So, her medal's in the post, obviously. But yeah, first up then, Premiership Cup. We finished that. Less said, sooner spended, I suppose, really, in a way. Although we are going to discuss it in a bit more depth with Charlie in the interview me and Matt did with him. But yeah, looking at results on paper, not a great situation, but then was it as bad as we all think, given the injuries, given the call-ups from the squad that would have probably been playing that? We've gone on into the senior team, the likes of Theo, Dan and Josh, and everything. It's not as bad as perhaps we may be thinking. Is that fair?
Yeah, results-wise, it's not good. I wasn't at the game, and I've only really seen some brief highlights. But looking at some of the other comments, the phrase "men against boys" cropped up, and that cropped up a little bit against London Irish, the previous game as well. And it does kind of seem that those guys not playing together as a side regularly is definitely having an effect on them. And that's something that we possibly need to address if there's not going to be an A-League going forward. But it was basically our academy side by the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, men against boys is used as a bit of a metaphor sometimes, but I think actually in the Prem Cup this season, at times we can take that quite literally. There's a lot of our first-year academy players that are, and try not to reveal anything that we talked to Charlie about in a second, but a lot of academy boys that weren't necessarily expecting to actually play in the Cup this season. There have been a lot of injuries. So for 18, 19-year-olds to come out and be given that much game time in the Cup that's also played very, very early on in the season, with these players only just coming into the academy, there's a lot to be said about the structure of the Cup and how it, even when the games are being played, doesn't necessarily work for those younger players. So there is a lot to think about. But another season that might have been slightly different. But I think there's plenty that these guys can take out of it, even though we have lost all the Prem Cup games.
Well, there's a wider question to be answered here, really, isn't there? And you talk about this, that players are coming in expected to play 4 games, and potentially that is going to be their only 4 games they'll play at that level of intensity at 18, 19 years old, which I remember playing 18, 19 years old. You weren't allowed anywhere near first team rugby. You were a Colts. You played age-defined rugby and you were protected. And if you're suddenly coming up against some hairy-assed 50 cap, player, and you're an 18, you are still essentially not far out of school rugby. There's an element of danger here. And, I don't honestly think that the Premiership rugby can have any idea of player welfare here, because, it will only take one young lad to be hit by somebody who is much older, much more physically developed, and then suddenly you've got a whole world of issues there. And you're right, Barry, you mentioned the A-team league. Now that's gone by the wayside. Perhaps there's a question to say about, in the same way as footballers are looked at, where the League Cup, they're putting in second teams or under 23 teams or something like that. Maybe there's an argument for clubs like in a Premiership being able to put out academy teams or under 23 teams in level 3, level 4 of the national game, and giving them the exposure there against good quality players, against top quality or experienced players, and they'll learn so much more. But expecting young lads to come in and just play the odd game, there's an issue there, I think.
Yeah, I think there is, and there's been some. I've heard one or two whispers that they view some of these academy lads as the opposition in training at Saracens, and that's obviously given them an exposure to the physicality and to how things work. But it won't be the same as playing regularly. And if we're not going to have an A-League, we need to find something to bridge that gap between academy, age grade rugby and first team. And I don't know what the answer to that question is, but there has to be something that put in there. Someone's going to have to think of a way around this, whether it's entering sides at levels 3 and 4, as you say, or whether it's loanees to playing championship games. Why don't we have a cup where we bring the championship sides in? I don't know. Would that work? Maybe.
Well, for me, the old Tetley Cup was a highlight. That you had an opportunity, regardless at what level, that you could be Oral, for argument's sake, who were in the third level, could end up playing Saracens in a match like the FA Cup. We're having the romance almost of having the opportunity to have a giant killing. That's gone out of the game hugely. And I think, when we look at football and we look at the FA Cup and the conversations around that being devalued, where, teams are making 11 changes or whatever, rugby has gone far beyond that in devaluing their cup competition to such a level as to where we see it now.
Yeah, and it's it is a shame, because there is something special about cups. It's not quite the same in rugby as it is in football. There isn't the great glamour and the great magic of the FA Cup, but there certainly should be a room for a knockout competition. We all love Europe, right? Because it is eventually it becomes a great knockout competition and a great opportunity to play sides that you don't see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we can finish that one there. We do need to have a chat about the Saracens women, because again they've come out of the cup competition. The World Cup is over now. Alliance 15 has started up, and Saracens got off to a winning start on the weekend against Loughborough Lightning. What's on the iPlayer? First thing I've got to say about the iPlayer is I can't believe how badly BBC got the team wrong. You said May Campbell was at 14, Ella Warris was at hooker on the team sheet beforehand. That's just simple stuff. Get the team right on the build-up. But yeah, it was not the most hugely convincing performance, but the right result and a step in the right direction. And bearing in mind, there's an awful lot of players who are still jet lagged or probably having a few beers or reacquaint themselves with their families, that's to come back in.
Yeah, I think it's another 2 weeks before we can see the England players, or the international, certainly the England players, back after their World Cup exploits. But yeah, it wasn't it wasn't a particularly bad performance. It's just a little bit rusty. And I suppose as the team's changed so much week by week by week, as players come back and what have you, you're probably going to see a little bit of that at the beginning of the season. That they kept it exciting by giving Loughborough a couple of fairly easy tries. I mean, the Loughborough winger Lauren Bolger, I mean, blimey, she's quick, but she's even quicker if you give her a 5-yard head start on the ball going in the wrong direction. So, but yeah, I mean, it was never really in that much danger. Special shout out to May Campbell, who's now scored 9 tries this season, and the rest of the team have only got 10 between them.
Yeah, May is a try machine, but there's a couple of other people that need to be talked about. Grace at number 8, she was outstanding, I thought. There was the one run she did where she was putting the handoff in on the Loughborough defender, and first handoff went into the sort of like the sternum, and then she moved up slightly onto the chest, and then it was one in the face. Look, just bugger off, would you? And I mean, yeah, as I might have mentioned on occasion about my own number 8 exploits, I mean, that was manna from heaven for me to watch that. I thoroughly enjoyed that run. That was for me the highlight of the game. But yeah, the gunner open side as well. Forgive me, I've forgotten the name. That's terrible of me, but I'm as bad as the BBC, obviously. But she had a fine game, and obviously Marley Packer in the World Team of the Year. She's going to have to work hard to get that place. Come on, Matt, drag me out the mire here.
That's what Sharifa Casalo, I think, is the.
That's it. Thank you very much. And I was still overexcited about the big number 8 run. So.
Yeah, and to be fair, Grace Moore at 8, she's already made a bit of a name for herself and a bit of a habit of doing that, because in the cup games at the start of the season, we saw exactly the same thing, just a run from the halfway line straight down the middle, straight towards the post. So definitely one to look out for. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. In the back row, I think did very well. We obviously spoke to Fee McIntosh last week, who I thought led from the front very, very well in the second row. Ella Vivas at 9, sort of having to. It's going to sound a bit harsh, having to sort of marshal the game, playing 9 and a bit of 10. We've got no Zoe Harrison for a little while. Flo Williams joined the squad, I think, Monday, Tuesday, so came off the bench having probably barely met some of her teammates. So Katie Johnson at 10, who's just about coming through the academy, was really quite thrown in at the deep end there, and I think did absolutely fine. But Ella, taking a real sort of senior role and taking a lot of the pressure off at 10 by the way she kicked from the base of the scrum and elsewhere as well. So I think, yeah, she had a really good game at 9. So there's a lot to like. There's a few of the newer players as well that are coming through that should have a bit of confidence from that game as well. And yeah, it looked a little bit sloppy at times, but relatively comfortable despite getting to the end of the game thinking we need another try. For most of the game, we were pretty well in control. So I think it does look good for the start of the season, definitely.
Well, absolutely. I think that's an interesting point you make about Ella there. That very much in the old Pierre Berbizier style that Anton Dupont takes on for France now. Very much the general work in the forwards and the backs, which is a very, it's an exemplary scrum half who can do that. Very, very well. Kieran Bracken was another who was very good at shoving his forwards around the field, but then also released in his backs. Matt Dawson as well. That's where England built a lot of success, in the World Cup, having that player linking and playing like a general. That's why France are so good, why New Zealand's so good with Aaron Smith doing it for them. So, yeah, that was great to see. And as I say, youngsters coming through. It was a very, this season, typical Saracens performance in so much as that, I think they're trying to do stuff. And at some point when it does come off, it's going to just be amazing. And that's the same with the men. The one thing I always used to say when I coach kids is about making decisions and that, and giving kids the confidence to do something. You got the ball in your hand, do something. And I think that's what Saracens are doing now. They're saying to you, look, you've got the ball in your hand. Look up what's in front of you, do something with it. And, sometimes it won't come off. And, when it was absolutely hammering down with rain, it was possibly not going to come off. but they carried on doing it, and they believed in what they were doing, and it bare fruit in the end.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a massive difference. I'm sure we'll come on to England later, but there's a massive difference between the way that Saracens are trying to play this season, and they're trying to play heads up rugby and play what's in front of you, and a side like England who seem to have a very rigid game plan, and they stick to that no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I did mention it earlier on, just a quick one to say well done to Marley Packer on being named in the world team, women's team of the year. I think she's very unlucky not to be world player of the year, to be perfectly honest with you. The Kiwi girl got it. Was she brilliant the whole season through, or was it just, well, I'm not on the panel. I should be, obviously. Perhaps one day the Fezcast will become important enough that I will be asked to be on the panel, and you'll see a totally an interesting point of view. But yeah.
Well, World Team of the Year will be 15 number 8s when Jez gets
we will talk about number 8 in part 3, but there's end part 1 there. We'll have a quick advert, and then we'll come back with mine and Matt's interview with Charlie-Reynolds West in part 2.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Fezcast. One of Saracens' young, up-and-coming, new players, shall we say, Charlie-Reynolds West has joined us. Charlie, welcome to the Fezcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks, mate. Wicked. Glad to be here. Good to be a part of it. Love what you guys are doing with the podcast, so just happy to get involved.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for doing that, Charlie. And as I say, yeah, you're on the very start of your career with Saracens. How old are you now, by the way?
I'm 18.
18, God blimey, yeah. There you go. I was right, Matt. It's when players are being born just not long after I retired almost from playing. But no, it's great. I mean, that you've joined Saracens. Tell us why Saracens. How did this opportunity come about? What is your past in rugby, and where have you come from?
So I started off at Harlow RC when I was younger. I played in the minis up there. And sort of played my way, worked my way up there from young. I never did any tag stuff. I just started at 5 years old. My dad took me down there, and he was part of the coaching setup at Harlow, and he sort of came with me the whole way up as I was going through the juniors there. And when I went to school in Bishop Stortford, so they helped me massively with my rugby there and progressing there. When I was in year 7, I was lucky enough to get picked for like an Essex trial, the sort of DPP setup sort of thing they used to do there. And as you do, you get over the moon about that opportunity to go and sort of play for Essex at a young kid. And I was, so I must have been 12 when I first started that, and was lucky enough to then get selected for that and work my way up into sort of the Sarri setup. They do it a bit older now, but at the time it was sort of under 14s, under 15s, PDG setup it was called. So sort of the next step above counties where they mix Kent, Hertfordshire and Essex. And I went for a trial at Stonex there and was lucky enough to get through on that trial. I was playing scrum half at the time. I've always been a scrum half up until sort of this time last year was when I moved to wing. So I was playing a scrum half with my rugby then. And then I sort of stayed in that system, going through the process there with a few of the lads that are also in the senior academy now. Was playing rugby, enjoying rugby there, and then COVID sort of confused everything when I come out of school, because I never did my GCSEs or anything like that. It was all on the mocks and stuff. So I ended up coming to college at Oaklands College. Played a little bit of rugby there. Didn't really get to play too much because of COVID and everything that happened with that. Fell out of love with rugby, and then luckily fell back in love with it. As I said, this time last year, and I was playing on the wing. I moved from scrum half, played on the wing in Academy League last year, under 18s. I scored a few tries, and then was lucky enough to be offered a trial contract over the summer with Saracens to go in a pre-season. And then I did that trial, and at the end of that, I was lucky enough to be given a full-time contract at Saracens in the senior academy. So that's sort of my journey, where I've came from and where I am now.
Well, that's brilliant to hear. And as I'm sure Matt will agree here, all the best sportsmen in the world come from Essex. I was born in Essex, although I lived in Oxfordshire most of my life. Matt, you're Essex, aren't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a confession to make. I live in Harlow, and I've never actually watched a game at Harlow RFC where literally I could walk. My only excuse is I'm a Harlow immigrant. I moved over the border 5 years ago from Hertfordshire, so it's still
there we go.
Still pretty fresh. But yeah, no, yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna throw it out there that two of England's three best sporting captains all come from Essex. So obviously Bobby Moore and Alistair Cook. Well, Graham Gooch as well. So, I mean, it's about time we had a young Essex rugby player coming through to perhaps lead England in the future, Charlie. But, you're now at the club. You've made a few appearances in the Premiership Cup this year, which, I mean, on the strength of it, we'll be honest, results didn't go the way perhaps that you and the club would have wanted them to go. But a lot of young lads like yourself gaining an awful lot of good experience on the pitch there. How has you developed this season, and how have you seen the club developing, the youngsters like yourself developing?
Yeah, so obviously we've had it's been unfortunate to have quite a few injuries in a first team squad, but at the same time it's a positive for like me and a few of the other young boys that has given us the opportunity to represent the club in that tournament, which is like a dream come true for me from a young age anyway. And it's really cool to sort of make my debut and play a few games with my closest mates that I've come through that PDG development program with, and was playing this time last year at Academy League. So it's been wicked to play with those boys. I think the club has been wicked with sort of giving us those opportunities, and I know the results have been tough, but for us lot in the future, hopefully it will come to show that it's been really good learning lessons, and we're gonna take that forward. Playing like we've played very little senior rugby, the majority of us anyway. So to play in that competition is really going to benefit us in the future. And even with some of the older boys in that group, we spent such little time together because obviously the Premiership is the big thing, and that's the main competition that everyone's looking towards. But when it comes to the squad that we've been putting out with our Prem Cup games, we've had such little time together in training, but we've done a really good job since the Quins game of actually gelling together and forming new relationships between sort of all sorts of ages in that team, and a lot of the older boys have really helped the younger lads building confidence and made sure we've kept our heads high as we've been pushing through this campaign, and hopefully next year and years to come that will benefit us, and we can do the same for younger boys coming through as well.
Just going to say, Matt, just so you're aware, because I know you're a bit of an old fogey and everything, when Charlie says wicked, that's good, all right?
That means good, yeah. That's fair, yeah.
I mean, but that's an interesting thing you say there, Charlie. I mean, we're, long-term supporters of Saracens, obviously, and we go back, I go back sort of 15 years now to the likes of Alex Good and Jamie George and Owen Farrell, all coming through, doing the same as what you've done, coming through age group rugby, perhaps slightly different in so much as that obviously the COVID situation kind of put brake on a lot of people's development, perhaps. But, do you look at Saracens and think, yeah, this is totally the right place for me as a player to develop and be given the best chance to become a professional rugby player?
Well, yeah, is the easy answer. I've supported Saracens all my life, so since whenever I can remember, since I was a little boy, I've supported the club as well. And without sounding like too much of a nose, I love the club, I love the coaches, love the team. It's got some of my best mates there, made really good friends that I'll have for life there, no matter what happens in the future. But day to day, I love what I do. Do you know what I mean? I really enjoy my job, and some of the older boys there, the best players in the world there to learn off. So for me, I really think I benefit, like, just from even how I was as a player this time last year to coming where I am now. I feel like I've developed a lot, and I'm really looking forward to learning more and developing more from the older guys at the club, and hopefully one day coming through and being in a similar position to them at the club. That's my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned earlier on when we were sort of talking about the Prem Cup games that, I mean, to be fair, probably right thing to say. There's a lot of injuries certainly among the backs at the club at the minute, and maybe you were given opportunities possibly a little bit earlier than you might have done. But it sounds like you and the other younger guys in the team, you've not had an awful lot of opportunity to really train hard together. There's a lot of guys that are off on dual reg with other clubs, and with the injuries in the squad, there's been pretty limited time in training together. Has that been the case that we've seen this season? There's a lot of fan talk, fan rumour that you're really, you're meeting some people in the car park for the first time, which is obviously a little bit over the top. But how has it been a little bit difficult this year with that, or?
So of course, like the Prem Cup campaign starts quite early on as it is. So we sort of come out of pre-season. I played like a game. I think I played one game before I got involved with the Prem Cup stuff, and obviously, as I was saying, the Premiership again is going to be the main focus for the club. But coming into training, it's like we haven't had the most of time because we've been there trying to support the older lads again, so that they can go perform at the weekend and trying to help them out in training as best as we can. But in the time that we have had training together, we've been working hard to try and put that performance forward. But I hope, like in the best of circumstances, of course, you're going to want more time. But with what we had, I feel like we did well to gel together and to actually. I think, like in some of the games, for example, the London Irish second half, we came out and we showed a really strong performance. So there was definitely insights throughout the campaign to what the future could be with that team, and I've really enjoyed sort of being a part of actually developing with that team and coming together. So yeah, we haven't had the longest amount of time to be together or to prepare for those games, but with what we've done, I feel like we've done a really good job to actually build, and as I said, there will be good learning experiences going forward.
We talk about those learning experiences, Charlie. I'm interested to find out from you. I'm remembering back to when I was your age, some way back in the distant past, the early 1990s, to give you an idea. When I first started, playing at a reasonable level, and I always remember being exposed to some coaching, particularly at Abingdon Rugby Club where I played. One coach in particular, Neil Crosby, is an excellent coach, and just giving those little bits of advice that stay with you. You've now come in, you're working with senior coaches, guys who are at the very top of their profession. What single piece of advice or training or coaching have you received that you think has perhaps helped you the most develop as a player in this period of time?
For me, it's a bit of it's more of a phrase, like for a mentality. For me, it's I was just told by one of my coaches I'm quite close with, is just never get bored of doing anything. Like never get bored, whether I'm doing passing drills and I'm just stood there passing the ball, making sure I'm focusing on every single bit of skill that I'm doing, whether I'm doing kicking, just never get bored and do it all, focusing, like train with a purpose type thing. Because it's easy to just go out there and kick a ball about when you're training, or throw it about and not actually be thinking about what you're doing. And it's the same on the pitch, like always staying alive, making sure I'm working hard, never getting bored of working hard. So when I'm working off the ball, making sure that I don't switch off at all, and I'm always like, if, for example, for me, a big thing as a winger is, because I'm not the biggest, is my work rate to chase after the kicks and stuff like that, to put pressure on early, to make up for maybe the less size of me, so I can get on some early doors, if you know what I mean. So for example, no matter what the scoreline is, or whether we're dominant or whether the other team's dominant, it's just not getting bored of chasing those kicks off kickoff and making sure I'm working 100% all of the time, to give my best for the team. So that's a big thing for me.
It's all about having that 100% intensity whenever you are doing it. I mean, one thing I used to coach with the kids was, when I coach kids, is that even if it's a drill and you go over the try line, you scored a try. You don't just trot back, you scored a try. Example, this is a weird example, but I watched the last Grand Prix of the season, Formula One Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher's one, and I remember sitting at the pit entrance at Silverstone, watching him come into the pit entrance. It didn't matter at what stage of the weekend, whether it was qualifying, practice runs, or the race, he came into the pits at full pelt and hit the rev limiter button at the last minute, so that every time he did it, he was doing it 100%. Whereas other drivers were stopping on practice, they were stopping 10 metres, 20 metres short. His intensity was 100%. And I think you see that, obviously, with the rugby players. You know, the best cricket players, Matt, you'll see that when they're in the nets, it's 100%. They're playing every shot. They're not having a waft about. And, you know, it's gratifying as someone who likes sport, likes coaching, to hear someone as young as yourself take that lesson on board, because that fills me, certainly, personally, with a lot of hope and excitement for the future, that, you know, the continuation that you see when you see Owen Farrell, who is 150% commitment intensity the whole time. I should imagine Owen Farrell doing, you know, changing his Tommy's nappies is 150% intensity. You know, I mean, whatever he does. And, you know, that's obviously what pervades through from the club, and you've taken on, which is great.
Yeah, no, 100%. You see it the whole way through the club, like with the first team in the Prem games at the moment, no matter what the scoreline is, whether we're down, whether we're dominant, like you see in the Bristol game the other week, whatever the scoreline is, whatever the time is in the game, we've always got the same mentality as a team throughout the whole entire game. So if someone breaks the line, we're all working back together to get back, and then to get back off the line and make hits to get that ball back and to score points. So it's definitely something that is being carved into me at a young age, and hopefully I'll be able to take that with me the whole way through my career, and that will stick with me.
I'm going to ask you another question, Charlie. I mean, you've mentioned there that you have been a long-term fan since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. Number one, are there going to be any embarrassing photographs of you in full Saracens kit at the age of like 5 that are going to appear in programmes in the future? That's number one. But number two, who is your Saracens hero growing up? Who is the player that you really, really want to emulate? And who was the player that you were desperate to get your photograph taken full kit, age 5, that's going to embarrass them when you appear in the first team with them?
Oh, here we go. There's definitely a few pictures that would be able to come out at some point in the future of me, a little young gun in my full Saracens kit at a game, or representing the Saracens gear somewhere. But in terms of my Saracens idol, well, for me, growing up as a scrum half, it was completely different. I was never really looking at wingers, and I was just in looking at the scrum halves all the time and watching what they do. For me, it was probably back in the day, Richard Wigglesworth. I watched him a lot growing up. He come to. I was at Stortford for a period of time in the sort of juniors and colts after I left Harlow, and he came to a Stortford training session one time, and he complimented me on one of my runs, and I remember that stuck with me, and I got well overexcited about it. And I managed to get a picture with him as well. So he was definitely Richard Wigglesworth growing up. I've never met him, but it was him growing up. I remember one time I went to one of the big games when they used to be at Wembley, and I was on the sideline, and I was shouting Jamie George for a picture, and he completely ignored me. So that's told me once. I haven't actually told him that before, but yeah, so probably Richard Wigglesworth in that one.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit. I think before we started, we were talking about how we're feeling a bit old. But when Charlie says back in the day, and then says Richard Wigglesworth, yeah, I mean, I know he's a bit old as well, but that's not fair. But it's interesting, talking about being a 9. I was going to say earlier, I was at the London Irish game. You talk about your intensity, you talk about wanting to be 100%. That's definitely something we noticed when you came onto the pitch from a London Irish, for the Irish game. And then you revealing that you used to be a 9 explains an awful lot, I think, because there was a few of us standing there. I'm sure you don't mind me saying this. They thought, he's a gobby little shit. Right, coming down. But yeah, no, it's we definitely noticed that yeah, proper intensity coming on. And yeah, Charlie, the other question I've got, Charlie, because everyone wants to know, how tall are you?
I'm 5'6".
5'6". Okay, well, Cheslin Colby's shorter than you, and he's not a bad winger, so that's all right. But
no, that's one person who I could aim to be. Yeah.
I can promise you that the hardest man that I ever played rugby with was 5'2". Mickey Fox, a man who turned around and told me that he was only frightened of 2 people in his life. One gave birth to him, and the other one he married. And he was a scrum half, ex-rugby league, played for Hulkingston Rovers. And I remember once being in a ruck and feeling him run up my back, stand upon my shoulders so he could launch a 6'10" copper into next week. So, yeah, plenty of tough guys come in small packages. I mean, this thing, Peter Stringer, who played at Saracens for a while, he was a little guy who played well above his weight. Ryan Constable going back sometime, he was a winger. He wasn't huge, but was a great player who played well above his weight category, as I say. So yeah, I think a bit with the right bit of attitudes and what does it say, a bit of dog in you, you can go a long way, I think.
We've got a habit of Saracens of having players that do seem to punch a little bit above their weight as well. I mean, Nick Tompkins is one that I always mention. I remember watching him flatten Nonu in a game, which, I mean, I would be running for the hills if he ran towards me. And Rotimi Shagan's another one who actually, in the brief amount of time that we've seen you playing, Charlie, is someone that I think very similar style of play in a way. So, it's definitely something to build on.
I always remember the famous story about Neil Back, and I'll tell this one, that Neil Back one year got dropped from England and wasn't taken on a tour down under, and the reason given was that he was too small, and he said, "Well, there's nothing I can do about my height. However, what I will do over the summer is ensure that I am big enough in bulk." And he went on a 8,000 calorie a day diet and gave up his job, because this was in the amateur days, over the summer, and went and trained for 4 hours, 5 hours every day in a gym, and went from 12 stone to 16 stone over the summer, and ended up 80 odd caps for England and winning a World Cup with England. So, the size, a lot of the size is up there as opposed to actually height or whatever. So, yeah.
Of course. No, it's been my height has obviously been a thing that's, I've always been small. I've never been tall. I didn't shoot up when I was younger and then stay the same height. I've always been the small guy in the team. So that's been something I've dealt with, and you could say I had a chip on my shoulder since I was a young rugby player. So yeah, I try not to let it be a disadvantage for me, let's say.
Well, Charlie, thank you very much for joining us. I think we probably have done quite a lot there, and we will look forward to speaking to you both at the games and at the club. But also, I think we'll try and get you on regularly, because you've been fascinating. It's given us a great insight, and obviously, you now need to go off and have a mixing bowl full of pasta to get those 8,000 calories on board. Yeah. And we'll see you when you're 16.5 stone of solid muscle in the future sometime. But yeah, Charlie, thank you ever so much for joining us. absolutely brilliant chat, and we will definitely look forward to speaking to you in the future again.
No, wicked, guys. Thank you very much for having me.
Not a problem.
Hi guys, I'm Alex Linton and I'm a proud Looseheads ambassador.
I'm Sydney Gregson and I'm a Looseheads ambassador.
We're a rugby mental health charity working to tackle the stigma. You can find us at Looseheads on all social media channels or at looseheads.co.uk.
The Looseheads mission is to place a mental health lead at every rugby club. Get in touch now to find out more. Take care and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Enjoy the rest of the pod.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back to part 3 of the Fezcast with me and Matt and Barry. And yeah, great little interview there with Charlie. Definitely very eloquent, very knowledgeable, a total fanboy who's realising his childhood ambitions, and all credit to him and well done to him. And we look forward to speaking to him more in the future, don't we, Matt?
Absolutely, yeah. Although I'm feeling old. I'm not even 30 yet, and I'm feeling old. It's not good.
I think about me and Barry in our late 30s. I mean, that's about right, is it? Late 30s, Barry?
I can't remember my late 30s, mate.
Well, look, yeah, he was fabulous, and as I say, we'll have him back in future. But we do now need to have a chat about England and one person in particular. Me and Matt had a bit of a to and fro on WhatsApp about this in the immediate aftermath of the game. But first up, we have to pay credit to Owen Farrell, 100 caps for England. He becomes the third 100-cap England player with Jason Leonard and the cap thief, the scrum half Ben Youngs. This is where this could be interesting, because I know you're not going to disrespect Owen, Matt, but you are going to pick him up on something, and we'll have a chat around that. But I think if there is a more maligned player in world rugby, not just by the normal suspects, as it were, from outside of England, but within England himself. This lad's played 100 times for England. He's captained England more times than you can shake a stick at. He's got 1,200 points off of the boot. He's, one of the, if not the greatest players, certainly of his generation, to have put on that England shirt. And yet he still gets dog zone abuse. You'll sit there. He had, for me, on the weekends, the man of the match performance. Yes, Richie Mwanga got it, and I can understand why that is. But Owen Farrell kept England in that game almost single-handedly in the backs at times on one leg. Marcus Smith, who was an absolute liability in defence, was made to look good because Owen Farrell was making his hits for him. Every decent bit of good play. Johnny May's break was one. I think there was one when Johnny May made a break and Owen Farrell has put the ball into him and then taken a late hit off of one of the All Blacks back rows. The bloke's hard as nails, and quite frankly, he should be respected, and he does not get the respect he deserves. Is that fair, Barry? I'm going to ask you, Barry, first.
It's, as you said it, that's completely fair. He gets a lot of abuse. A lot of it is because of who he plays for at club level, I've got to say, for some strange reason. If he played for another side, I'm sure he wouldn't get half of it. But you're right. I mean, we've discussed him on here a lot of times, and I know because he plays for us, we probably give him a little bit more credit than perhaps other people would. But, he is, Saracens and England are better sides when he's in the team. Irrespective of the other players, they're just a better side when he's there. He drags people along with him and brings them up to his level as best as he can, and he just improves any side more than just being a number. I just wish they'd play him at 10.
Absolutely, 100%. And we will discuss in a bit more detail who did bomb for England in that game. But Matt, Okay, in the immediate aftermath, you weren't exactly, shall we say, impressed. I was going to say you weren't happy, but less than impressed with a couple of conversations that Owen Farrell had with Charlie-Reynolds, the referee. So I'll give you you give us your viewpoint, and I think there might be a little bit. I think we are essentially coming to the same idea, but from perhaps slightly different directions.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, just before I do that, I'd say this is the one time that I ever give Danny Care's opinion a bit of credit, because actually, we talk about who does and doesn't value Owen Farrell, and yeah, he gets ridiculous stick. And actually, the opinion of his former 9-10 partner, who plays for a rival club that probably should hate his guts a little bit, he's someone that regularly turns around and says he doesn't understand why Owen Farrell gets the stick that he does and why he doesn't get the credit. So for a Harlequins and, I'm going to say X loosely, England 9, to have that opinion, I think that really shows what makes a difference. But yeah, there's a few people that have taken a bit of umbrage to something that happened at the weekend, which I think is, dialing backwards, it's a symptom of a little snowballing issue that is starting to happen in rugby, and it is entirely the fault of Mr. Erasmus. The respect for referees is very, very slowly disappearing down a hill. And we've actually talked about it on this show before, last season, the season before, where Saracens as a team are finding themselves on the wrong end of the referee, giving him a little bit of stick, this, that and the other. So 2 flashpoints at the weekend. One of, now names have gone out of my head now, which is a bit silly. So South African player who gave Matt Carley a bit of stick, told him to referee both sides, and Carley quite rightly said to the skipper, Khaleesi, if anyone, including you, does the same thing again, we've got some big problems. And the same thing happened in the England game. Owen Farrell, now I'm going to have to pull up the exact words because I don't want to get it wrong, because it does matter. Owen Farrell, exact words, you're only looking for one team ref. Referee obviously says I'm looking for both. Owen Farrell doesn't feel like it. Now, that is thinly veiled, telling the referee he's being biased. Now, there's 2 things here, and this is a little bit tricky. There is actually a bit of a myth that exists in rugby, that the captain has carte blanche to speak to the referee. Not the case at all. There is nothing in the laws of the game that says the captain has any more right than any other player to talk to a referee. At the start of a game, referee brings the 2 captains together for the toss and gives them a bit of a talking to about how he wants to referee the game and how he wants to be approached. So generally, players can ask referees questions. Captains have absolutely no right, the same as any other player, to tell a referee he's being biased. That is a simple fact. In the laws of the game, the only thing that's relevant is the fact that players should respect the decisions the referee makes. Now, it doesn't get enforced. My argument is that it should, and I actually think there's an issue in the laws, really, that it's not really clear exactly what the remit of the captain is with regards to the referee and what the players are and aren't allowed to do. And I think there is a massive, massive difference between Owen Farrell's words to Reynolds and what we've been seeing on social media and on pitches from, to be honest, someone like Johnny Sexton, who is constantly mouthing off at the referee, and I don't understand why he doesn't get penalised for it, but another story. They are 2 very different things. But I think the problem that we've got is that without us noticing, it is very, very slowly getting worse and creeping into the game more and more. And Owen Farrell is a role model, 100%. He's probably one of the best role models as a rugby boy, should be one of the best role models for England. And I expect him to be setting an example. And his words to Reynolds at the weekend wound me up, because they're not going to help. Referee's not going to suddenly start being biased towards you. And if he is, then you shouldn't be refereeing at international level, because if you're being approached by players and changing your minds because they're telling you to, you shouldn't be doing it.
I'm going to disagree with you slightly, and I'm going to disagree with you by bringing up 2, one apocryphal story and one situation that actually happened to me as a captain. And it will explain a little bit why. I'll take issue with you about captains don't have a right to speak to the referee. A good referee will always want to have a conversation with the captain. And all the best referees I played with when I was a captain always made it clear that they were happy to have that conversation with me because it helps make the game flow and helps get the communication over. And I think that's something that Owen Farrell has been very, very good at over the years and that he's developed. Yep. And which someone like Nigel Owens will say about Owen Farrell is that he's extremely good at asking those sort of questions. Now, yeah, I think maybe there was a slight overstep, but I don't think it was coming from a position of saying, particularly that Reynald was cheating. It was just a case of, look, we don't think we're getting the rub of the green. And when he said, well, you are, I think it was a case of, well, we're not feeling that. What do we need to do more? The apocryphal story I want to tell you is about the 2003 World Cup final, and Kieran Bracken tells this story brilliantly. But apparently, at the end of full time, Andre Watson, the referee, was having an absolute stinker. And let's be honest about it, those of us who watched it, was he might as well have had an Australian shirt on, quite frankly, that day. Apparently, allegedly, apocryphally, Martin and Johnson went up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Yes, certainly." He says, "Andre, if I was to turn around to you and say you're a wanker, what would happen?" He said, "Martin, I'd send you off and your World Cup would be over." And Martin Johnson looked at him and said, "Well, what if I thought, if it was in my thoughts?" He said, "I could do nothing about your thoughts." He said, "Okay, I think you're a wanker." I use that because what you're accusing, or what we're saying about Owen Farrell is not something new. I don't think this has ever been in the something that's slowly happened. It's been happening for years and years and years. And the best referees, Sean Fitzpatrick was never unaverse of having a word in a show like. If you believe the 1999 semi-final, France versus New Zealand, the French captain on that day spoke to the referee at half-time. I have this on pretty good authority, and said, "If you do not change the way that you are refereeing, my team will not come out for the second half." And they come out for the second half, and the refereeing was changed, and France went on and won that game to get into the final. The second thing I'm going to point out is a situation that happened to me as a captain at Abingdon, where we got refereed by this old boy. He was a late pull-up. He came in, he must have been about 72. He couldn't keep up with play, and he was the most goddamn awful referee that we've ever had. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And at a point, we had a decision went against us, and my hooker went, "That's an effing joke," and got sent off. Quite rightly got sent off. I turned around to the player afterwards and said, "You go and speak to that referee and apologise." And I went with him, and the referee just wouldn't even speak to him. And I lost it. The reason I lost it, and I'm not proud of this, but that referee refereed that game that made it absolutely inevitable that something was going to happen. Now, the problem we've got with Matteo Reynald is, as much as I don't like criticising referees, he was down to referee Romania versus Samoa in Bucharest. And there's a reason for that, because he is not a tier one referee. We've had problems with Reynald in the past. He just does not put any confidence. So whilst, you have to respect the referee, there's also responsibility from the referees to be at that highest level. Now, Matt Carley is at that higher level. Wayne Barnes is at that high level. Nigel Owens was at that high level. Even someone like Jacko Piper is at that. Angus Gardner. They wouldn't, as you say, they've got the balls to turn around and say, look, no, cut that off. Reynald refereed in a way that it was going to always happen that something like this might occur. That's the issue I've got with the way he refereed. And, and you're right, Owen, perhaps looking back at it, will go, I probably shouldn't have said it in that way. I should have perhaps phrased it slightly different. But also you look at the situations in the game where Reynald made an absolute horrocks of a decision. And there was the one where Owen came running in and literally pushed his entire pack back, saying, look, don't question it, don't question it. Respect it, just get on with it. It's not worth arguing about. That's the decision he's made. We play to it. So, I think there was both sides of that in that. I just don't think when you compare it to the South African hooker and then Rassie Erasmus going off after the game, making it apparently feels referees are cheating his team. That's completely different to someone in the heat of battle turning around and making a slightly less than ideal questioning of the referee, which 99 times out of 100, Owen would never would do it in the right way anyway.
Yeah, it was a little flashpoint, and it is, it's not something that happens all the time with Owen, although a lot of people will tell you it is. It really doesn't. It just happened to be on the day when it had happened again with another South African player, and there was a huge flashpoint over social media for it. And Owen Farrell wouldn't have known that because he'd have been training for his own match. But yeah, for it to happen on exactly the same day, I just think there needs to be a bit of a clampdown, or not a clampdown is the wrong word, but they need to clarify the laws of the game, where the remit of the captain starts and ends and where the remit of the player starts and ends, because there isn't actually anything stopping this from continuing and from getting worse. So I think you got to nip it in the bud now if you want rugby to be a game where the referee is respected regardless of whether or not you're thinking he's having a good game.
So go on then, Barry. You've listened to me and Matt Witter on there about the situation. How do you see it? And, as I say, you could be refereeing this one.
Gee, thanks.
I bear in mind you may get accused of being one-sided here as well. But
I was going to say I'll try and look for both sides here.
Have we got a TMO?
My partner calls that too many officials because sometimes it does annoy the hell out of us when the game stops and you've got to look at it 27 times. Anyway, let's get back to the subject. So there's lots to chew on there. First of all, the Rassie Erasmus thing, or should we say unknown international coaches putting stuff out on social media, that needs to be stopped, because if you follow that through, there are reports of people having death threats and all sorts of things being made against them on the back of this perceived injustice about biased refereeing and decisions being endlessly questioned 3 days later on via Twitter, which is a fairly toxic place at the best of times. Owen Farrell, yeah, he does occasionally shout things at referees. I mean, I've heard him do it myself at other games, and it doesn't always come across perhaps as well as he'd like it. Sometimes he probably just needs to stop and think and say, can I come and ask you a question, referee, or could you possibly look at XYZ rather than what he said on Saturday? I mean, it's not the same thing. Let's not go down that route. And I mean, certainly Owen's not the only player who does it. I mean, we're talking about scrum halves earlier. I mean, Conor Murray used to arrive at the breakdown asking for something every flipping time. You could see him. He would get his appeal in before he'd even look for the ball half the time. But it does need to stop. Perhaps it is one for the IRB to look at and to say, okay, we're actually going to define who can and can't speak to the referees and under what circumstances. And, we'll have to perhaps have a little bit of a clamping down on it. And definitely people shouldn't be putting things on social media. I mean, to get a two-week touchline ban for that is for a second offence as well. I say second official offence. I mean, he's put plenty of stuff out there over the years, and he's making South Africa a not very enjoyable team to follow, in my opinion, which is interesting because I'll be watching him on Saturday.
John Smith's actually come out today. I've only just read it. He's got a little article out saying pretty much the same thing, that Rassie is not working wonders for the opinion towards South African rugby, put it that way. So yeah, for John Smith to come out and say that sort of thing's got to stop, and that kind of what we're all at pains to say really is that for all that I got annoyed on Saturday, me and no one else in any way are equating Owen Farrell's one heated comment to what Rassie Erasmus has been up to all the time. But I think
Chris Foy is.
Chris Foy is, yeah, but he there's an awful lot.
But then again, he's always had an axe to grind, hasn't he, for some whatever reason?
But funnily enough, he works for a rag paper that needs to create these headlines. But yeah, I mean, my concern is that it's one of those things that people watch that on the telly and it's going to bleed slowly into the community game, as it has done in community football, and we're going to run out of referees. Unfortunately, it's just the case that I hold Owen Farrell to a much higher standard than I do many other players, because I think he's that good. So that's part of the problem.
Absolutely. Well, look, we discussed Owen Farrell, and as I said, I think he was man of the match on Saturday. And I think England's the 70 minutes were pretty abject. The 10 minutes, they were pretty spectacular. And I think, seriously, it's because somebody on that pitch turned around and said, I don't care what Eddie Jones is telling us to do. We just need to have a crack at this because we're at home. We're 17 points down. And there was a very Saracens-style comeback in it. A lot of it came down to when players were swapped. So the front row changes made a huge difference to England, as did David Ribbons coming on for Johnny Hill. How Johnny Hill got 7 out of 10 and Maro only 6 out of 10. This is an interesting one. I'm going to mention Maro Itoje. We're going to talk about World Player of the Year in a bit and the World 15. Everybody's saying that Eben Estebev, should have been in the World 15. It was Tag Byrne and Sam Whitelock who got the second row berths. What everybody forgets about the likes of Sam Whitelock and Eben Esteves and Brodie Retallick and Tag Byrne is that they play next to a world-class second row at international level. Maro Itoje has either played at blindside for England, he's going to be back at blindside against South Africa, or he's carried either Alan Wynne-Jones at British Lions level or Johnny Hill. The guy plays 2 second row positions and still can compete with the likes of Eben Estebev, who doesn't have to worry about who's packing down on his right side because he's got Lou De Jager there, or Brodie Retallick, who's got Sam Whitelock next to him, or even at Scotland. Scotland have got pairs of second rows. And it was only when David Ribbons come on that we actually had a second row partnership that worked. And that's half the thing. There was one time Johnny Hill took the ball into contact. And I ain't saying that I would have done any better because they would have put the All Blacks would have put me into next week. But he was picked up and driven backwards. This is 20 stone of international so-called second row. Should never have happened. And that's the problem that Maro Itoje. So I thought Maro Itoje, first half, in the same way as I thought Owen Farrell carried his backs, Maro Itoje was carrying his forwards and has done for quite a lot of the last couple of seasons. And, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I will say Billy Vunipola didn't have his best game. Sam Simmonds had a reasonable game at blindside. Tom Curry, I still cannot see how Ben Earls cannot get ahead of Tom Curry at the moment because I think Tom Curry's slightly worked out as an international open side. But the big difference was Maku, Jamie, and Will Stewart coming on in the front row.
I mean, I've got a much simpler brain than Jez. Clearly, I mean, I've written off 70 minutes of rugby, and the difference was in 10. I think the front row that came on pretty much changed the game on their own. Ribbons, who I will happily hold my hands up and say I don't really know why he was in and around the England squad all the time. He's firmly put me in my place there because I think even just the 20 minutes that he had off the bench really did change things around. And I would grudgingly say that Ben Youngs actually had his good 20 minutes that he has every couple of years, which, absolutely fair enough. It's papered over some cracks, to be honest. But I think off the bench, England were very good. I think, the likes of, I thought Marcus Smith had a good game once he was let off the leash as well. I think that's something to say for me. I know Jez is shaking his head at me, but Owen Farrell was very, very good. Previous conversation aside. And it's a very, very strange game to dissect for me.
The biggest problem is that, when you look at a performance like that against New Zealand, when we beat them in the World Cup semi-final, were a far different animal to what they are now. New Zealand are a team that is a combination of a dad's army and a lot of players who are still making their way in the game and are not coached as well as they have been in the past. They've had some quite ordinary results this year. And there is an element that Eddie was quite right in his pre-match comments when he turned around and said, New Zealand are there for the taking, which is all well and good because they are there for the taking. But if you're going to say that, you better put a team out that's actually going to go out and take them. And that's the problem that they didn't. They played to Eddie's thought that England could just beat them up and, steamroller them. And plan A for 70 minutes didn't work. And whether it was Eddie turning around and having a road to Damascus epiphany on the sideline, or whether it was Owen Farrell and Ben Youngs and, Maratoji or the senior players on the pitch going, sod this, a game of soldiers, let's have a crack. I don't know. But, if you're going to turn around pre-week and say New Zealand are there for the taking, don't put a team out in the park that's not going to take them on. And England didn't take them on for 70 minutes.
No.
Yeah, there's been all sorts of talk about Marcus Smith kicking the ball out on the whistle, and if New Zealand were there for the taking, you kind of wonder why he would do that. But it wouldn't be the first time Owen Farrell's got a team together under the posts or whatever and said, you know what, we might as well just have a go at this and see what happens.
Post-match interview with Owen Farrell. Obviously, he's not going to throw his own teammates under the bus, but apparently he and Marcus Smith, having got into the draw of the game, they both discussed what their tactics was going to be. And according to Mr. Farrell, him and Marcus Smith between them said, if we've got front foot ball, we go for it. If we haven't got front foot ball, we kick it out. Now, New Zealand kicked off really, really well, I thought, for that final kick-off. It dropped between a few players. Owen Farrell himself had to get involved in the ruck to retain the ball. So Smith didn't have his link man in the centre of the pitch, which is probably why he then kicked the ball out. So I get it. Bit of a shame, I think. But it sounds like it was a joint decision between the two playmakers, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, it does make sense. And I can, as I say, I could completely understand that. My problem is that in 10 minutes, England showed what they needed to do, which was play like they did in the first half an hour against New Zealand in the 2019 semi-final, which was basically to go, do you know what? I go back to when I was coached as a kid and when I coached kids. The one thing I was always told, best form of defence is to attack. What you do as a captain, you win the toss, you elect to field the kick. You take the ball, you keep it alive, you go up the pitch, you get over the white line, put it down, there's 7 points for you. You return to your own half and repeat. It is a simple game. And England showed enough in those last 10 minutes that if they'd gone like that at the start of the game, it would have been them putting New Zealand to the sword. As Eddie said, they were there for the taking and they didn't take it. And that's what really disappointed me about that game.
To be honest, the other part of that is the simple way of looking at it is that these are glorified friendlies. So why not? Why not just let it go?
Absolutely. Although ranking points are important when it comes to seeding for World Cup. But, yeah, let's see what they do against South Africa. And bearing in mind that he's going to play a half-fit Owen Farrell at 12 again, with a couple of quality centres in South Africa and Maratoji at blindside because they're worried about the line out. But quick one, World Player of the Year, Josh van der Flier. Do we agree, yay or nay? Because I could tell you that if you disagree, you're wrong, because I think he's had an absolutely amazing season. The only other player I would have put up there, and this is the interesting one, because all the South Africans are upset that Eben Estevev isn't in the side, but I think Tagburn and Sam Whitelock have had great seasons, done well. And also Ardie Savea, who has been pretty special, but the only other player I would have put in there who didn't get on the shortlist is Gregory Aldrit, who I thought had an absolutely amazing year for France and worthy to get in as number 8 on the World Team of the Year.
Yeah, it probably shows how far in the Northern Hemisphere, how far ahead of everyone else France and Ireland are currently at the moment. That the players that we're talking about from this side of the world are all from there. You know, it's England players aren't getting a look in at that at the moment, and really we should be.
Oh, absolutely. And you, Matt, you happy with that one?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think, I mean, for Savea not even to be in the picture was a bit odd, I think. But yeah, I mean, it's all very subjective, isn't it? And it's not like there's one standout good player. There's a lot of players in world rugby at the moment that are head and shoulders above other players in their team sometimes, and especially in the back row, I think. So yeah, that seems fair enough to me.
Yeah, now I was going to come up with a disciplinary thing, but we're going to hold that back for the next Fezcast because Matt, you're not going to be here next week, are you? Because you're on a bit of a dissertation writing spell.
Yeah, I've got to have it finished by this time next week, so I'm not having any sleep for a while.
Well, that's fair enough. Barry, you got much planned on for the next week or so?
Well, hopefully an awful lot of rugby on the weekend, because I'm hoping to get, obviously going to see England, South Africa on the Saturday. I'm also hoping to get to the Stonex for the double header.
Well, excellent. Yeah, and that's something we're going to look forward to on our next week's show, reviewing that. Me personally, I've just got to bring out, I don't know whether you guys saw this week, an absolute hero in the sport of rugby, not just union, but league as well. And I think we can forgive him for his part in Saracens' downfall in last year's final. But Sir Kevin Sinfield, 7 ultra marathons in 7 days for his old mucker, Rob Burrows, to raise, I think it's over £1.5 million for the Motor Neurone Disease Association is absolutely amazing. I'm going to announce it here now that as this goes live at 6:00 on Wednesday morning, I'll have done my first. I'm not doing 7 ultra marathons. That's a little bit beyond me at the moment, although, you never know in the future. But I am going to be doing my own 7 in 7 because, as you know, I raise money for Motor Neurone Disease. I'm going to be doing 7 miles on 7 consecutive days on a treadmill in 70 minutes-ish. There'll be a 7 at the front of my time because I've had a bit of a back injury. So if I can't quite do it, but that's running at 6 miles an hour for 70 minutes, 7 days, 7 miles. So anybody wants to support me there, get to justgiving.com/fundraising/Jezza-Denton and throw me some quids. We'll put the link up on Facebook and on Twitter. But yeah, that's my plan for the next few days.
Oh, just from my point of view, I thought an ultra marathon was just a big chocolate bar.
You're showing your age now, aren't you? I don't like peanuts, so I can't have them. But
yeah, I'm going to be doing my dissertation fueled by Ultra Snickers, so it'll be all right.
Well, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen. Again, always a pleasure talking to you guys about rugby, and even if we do have a slight disagreement on the odd thing here and there, but look forward to recording next week. We'll be back, as I say, next week. What day is it next week, Matt? Have we worked that out yet?
30th, mate. My dissertation's due in then.
Oh, yes, the 30th. So, yeah. Matt's dissertation day. And but we'll be back with a selection of our Fezcast hosts with me to chat over what's gone on the weekend, possibly having another rant about Eddie Jones or whatever. But thank you, everybody, for listening in. And we'll speak to you soon.
This is the Fezcast.